So let's begin first step with intro to blockchain and crypto. Yes, we're beginning from the basics. Intro to blockchain and crypto. Why is crypto important? Why is crypto valuable? Right? So you've probably seen lots of videos talking about what blockchain and crypto is, all right, but I haven't really covered this since like 2017. And we have so many new people coming to our platform and our channel, but where do you start? How do you explain blockchain and crypto to somebody who's new, to a newbie? Right? So beginning at a high level, I think of people have been explaining blockchain and crypto as this new form of money. Yes, that is true. Right? For me, a better way to view this, which is now becoming true, is blockchain and crypto assets, or cryptocurrencies in general, are the evolution of the next internet. So yes, it's disrupting money, but it's much bigger than that. We're disrupting the whole internet. Right? So if we take a step back and we go with Web 1, Web 1 was essentially the first evolution of the internet. It was the first internet. It's a dot-com era. It's basically Google, Yahoo, all the search engines, eBay, Craigslist. It was the dot-com era. It was for the first time you could consume information globally through a network called the internet. Right? And I think if you're watching this on the internet, you already know what the internet is, right? So it's an easier place to begin. Then you had Web 2. Web 2 is essentially social media. Why was Web 2 so disruptive? Web 2 essentially allowed the user to create the information, and it allowed the users to connect with each other. You basically had social networking. That's basically Web 2. You had Facebook, you had YouTube, you had Twitter, you had Instagram, you had WhatsApp. Basically, users could talk to other users and really start to build online communities and online forms of engagement. That's all it was. That's Web 2. Okay, so I think that part is easy to get. Okay, next part, Web 3. This has become a buzzword. But before this was even a buzzword, this was really what blockchain was all about. Web 3 is building upon Web 2. It's taking those same concepts of the internet, of Web 2.0, but now it's removing central authority. It's removing any intermediary, from central banks to governments to middlemen to rent seekers, essentially, and it's creating everything peer-to-peer, but it still maintains trust. So two strangers on the internet can still participate and engage and transact and still have trust. And that's all being done via the blockchain. What does that mean? Right? We've seen the errors of Facebook's data mining and stealing people's data on the internet. How do you solve that? What if you could build a Facebook with no Facebook? That's powerful. What if you could build a Twitter with no Twitter? What if you could build a YouTube with no YouTube, where all the information was held by the entire network and nobody actually owned it? And if anything, you owned your own data. You owned your own information. So Facebook cannot data mine unless you gave them the permission to, where basically ownership is not owned by a central company like Facebook or YouTube or Google. Ownership is owned by you, the individual, the user. That's powerful. That's Web 3. And that's being powered by blockchain. What is blockchain? At a high level, blockchain essentially is a database. I know it sounds very simple, but it's basically a database, except the ledger is being shared by every user. Well, not really in reality, but hypothetically, every user confirms that ledger via basically miners or nodes, and everybody has a single version of the truth. What does that mean? That means my blockchain, my database, and your database is exactly the same. If there's an issue, if there's a discrepancy, then there's an issue, right? So blockchain at a high level is really just a decentralized database. So if you're a newbie, just think of blockchain as a decentralized database. And the whole network, everybody on the network has the single version of the truth, has the same version. That's how you're able to have no central authority at a high level, right? Now, what's a crypto asset? What's a cryptocurrency? A cryptocurrency is a medium of exchange, but I like to view it more as take money in the real world, cash, fiat, moolah, dineros, whatever term you have for it, shillings, right? Take real analog cash in the real world, and make it digital. That's not that huge of a leap. So for instance, because nowadays we have PayPal, we have Venmo, we have Cash App. That's all cryptocurrencies are, except as opposed to me sending you via PayPal dollars or euros or yen or whatever, right? I am sending you a cryptocurrency that is owned by the whole world. for example, Bitcoin or stablecoin, right? So in this new internet, in this world of Web 3.0, there are no central authorities that control or own the data. Everything is owned by the community. Think of it as almost like open source, right? So in this new world, how do you disrupt money, right? Because it's not that big of a leap to imagine that you'll have digital money in this new world. Or this digital money is not owned by the US dollar, or the US Federal Reserve or other central banks. You, the user, and the community come together and you decide what asset holds value. So that's all crypto assets are. It's digital money with no central point of contact. Like Bitcoin has no CEO, is a joke, right? But that's why it's powerful, because it's immutable. You can't really shut down Bitcoin because there's no CEO to call for Bitcoin. On the downside, there's no customer support line for Bitcoin as well, right? But that's the power of Bitcoin. Why is that powerful? Because if you go into other parts of the world, right, in developed countries where people don't trust governments, how do people maintain or store their wealth if they don't trust the government, right? For example, in Turkey and Lebanon, where the inflation in Lebanon is ridiculous. I think, let me see if I can get the exact inflation for Lebanon, because it was published recently. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so, all right, so I have pulled this up here. Okay, so the average inflation rate by September 2021 reached 132%, basically 133% almost, higher than the average inflation rate of 66%. So think about this. Your money, your wealth, your family's wealth, the generational wealth you're trying to build for your future generations is basically going to zero. Not because of your wrongdoings, but because of your government's wrongdoings, because of the place you were born. And this is what crypto is trying to disrupt, right? At a high level, I keep on joking that not being in crypto is a financial crime, but that is the truth, because you're losing purchasing power. What does that mean? That means, take for example your rent, right? If your rent is what, $2,000, $2,000 a month, and you have $2,000 in the bank account, the price for your rent, the price for essentials, right? Household stuff, household items, and bills is going up, while the purchasing power, the amount of stuff you can buy with your dollars, is declining, right? Ever since the US got off the gold standard, everything has basically been declining, right? So at a high level, let me see here, US purchasing power. Right, so the same assets that you would buy, so here's a picture, right? So this is the purchasing power for the US dollar over time, right? So value of $1 was basically $26. But now, the value has been debased to a point where it's basically becoming worthless, right? So imagine if the money you have in your bank account in 5 years, by doing nothing, you wake up and you can buy a lot less things than you could buy 5 years in the past. That's what it means by you're losing purchasing power. In essence, you're losing wealth. You're being robbed, right? So how do you prevent that in this new world? You have to find other ways to store your value. And crypto assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or even these centralized stablecoins, they help with that. That's what they do, right? So that's that at a high level. Let me just check in here. Hey, what's up, Mark? How you doing? Mark says the dollar is still king of fiat. Yes, it is. So actually, one of the books on my to-read list is Ray Dalio. His book that just came out. Ray Dalio. Yeah, Principles for Dealing with the New World, with a Changing World Order. Right? This is on my to-read list. But basically, Ray Dalio is, I think from what I've heard, he's predicting the collapse of the US dollar. Right? Basically, the changing world order, why nations succeed and fail. And I think from a friend told me to read this book. He basically goes through and studies big civilizations and what made them decline. And I think, don't quote me on this, I think he's basically predicting the US is on the decline and the Chinese empire is on the up and up, right? But anyway, that's for a different controversial video. But definitely worth looking into. But anyway, that's basically intro to blockchain and crypto assets.